Welcome to... Wait, before we get started. My little buddy, that's Calcifer. He knows all about books. So if you ever need a book rec, just hit up the orange boy. Because just look at his face. It's full of wisdom. I fucked up the camera. It's full of wisdom. It's full of knowledge. It's full of story. That's really just what Orange Boy, his name is not Orange Boy. I don't know why I'm calling him Orange Boy. Anyways, Calcifer, that's my little buddy. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today, I'm talking about books again, obviously. That's why you're here. You like books. And specifically, I'm reading or talking about some nostalgic books, okay? I'm talking about those books that make you feel like a kid, that make you feel warm, fuzzy, bring back that like whimsy, that magical, imaginative feeling you get when you're a kid. Some of these books actually bring up specific memories I have of entertainment I enjoyed as a kid, and some of these are just like books that really just tug at the heartstrings and remind me to stay a kid and still enjoy the kid things. And all these are pretty simple stories too, which I'm a big fan of because I feel like if you can write a good story and keep it simple and make it really enjoyable by both kids and adults, like you've really won the lottery. That is a 10 out of 10 book in my opinion. So I have given ratings to all of these 5 out of 5, no notes. If you have a different opinion than me, shove it. I don't care. Because I literally feel like all 4 of these books are perfect and I love them all. I love their stories and I would reread every single one of them. That says a lot for me because I'm not typically someone that rereads. I feel like there are way too many books in this world and stories to explore. That being said, a couple of these books I've read multiple times. And I highly recommend all of them, and I'm so excited to talk about all of them because I really feel like they're all just like little treasure chests that deserve to be celebrated and read. And if you haven't read any of them, after you're done watching this video, go read it because like that's your homework assignment. Also, side note, there probably will be spoilers on some of these ones. I'm not going to like ruin the final ending on any of them, but I am going to be talking about plot points and different points of the story that I really appreciate and like. Even with any of the points I talk about, I think that you will still greatly enjoy reading any of these. That being said, I'm going to talk about my first book, which is Holes. If you're a 90s baby like me, you have definitely heard of Holes. And if you haven't, where have you been? Because Holes was like the movie I feel like in the 2000s. It was a Disney movie. It was so much fun. It's just like something that was such a big part of my childhood and a movie I watched multiple times at like sleepovers and like friend get-togethers. But I never read the book. I actually didn't even know it was based on a book until this year. But for anyone that doesn't know the story of Holes, it's basically about this kid who gets caught stealing some shoes. So he gets put in this camp where they have to dig these giant holes every single day in the middle of the desert. It kind of goes back and forth between like flashbacks of, I think in the 1800s, where you're getting like stories and pieces of this like criminal that existed and this like forbidden love story. And then you go back to present time and you get Stanley Yelnats, who's the main character, and then like this crew of kids at this camp. It's got all the elements of like a good kids adventure story. I feel like you have the past flashbacks, the old West kind of vibes and this like curse that's passed down through generations to like the present time. And you have kids going off on their own and like succeeding and adventuring through the desert and it gets crazy. But the best thing about this book is not all of those elements. It's how well they're all pulled together. It is a super simple story. When you're reading it, you definitely know you're reading a kid's book. The writing is super simple. The humor is kind of childish and funny. Like he talks about his, what is it? I wrote it down. No good, rotten, pig-stealing great-great-grandfather. And just like even little things like that, the way they talk about stuff is just, it just brings me joy and it's fun to read. The way the story gets pulled together and tied through the flashbacks and the present time is just so great. And I just felt like the entire time I was reading this book, I read this book a couple months ago, I was getting flashbacks of the movie, but then I was also just feeling like I was reading such a fun story with like fun characters. And Stanley is just like this resilient kid who keeps going, even though all this crappy stuff keeps happening to him. And Zero is just like a 10 out of 10 character. Every character has their own unique little like quirk to them, or just so much fun. So I highly recommend Holes. If you watched the movie as a kid and you didn't even know it was based on a book, go read the book. You're going to love it. You're going to just feel, I read it so fast too. It's a short kids book. So yeah, get to it, girl. Get to it. Let's see the next book. Oh, I love this book. This is probably my most favorite one on this list. And this is The Little Prince. This book is like a treasure chest of just great story, and it holds like a huge piece of my heart. This is actually one of the books that I've read numerous times and have had read out loud to me. If you have not heard of this, it is hard to describe the whole scope of this story, but it basically is about this little prince who lives on a tiny little planet, and he goes on this adventure, interacts with a fox, and goes to all these different planets, and interacts with a pilot who's stranded in the desert. And but essentially the whole story is this remembrance of childhood and what's important in life, and kind of does it in such a simple way, but it reminds you of all the things as adults that we can get distracted by. This is just a book that I recommend to everyone. If you haven't been reading in a long time and you want a book to get you back into reading again, The Little Prince. If you want a book that's going to bring you joy, The Little Prince. If you want a book you can read to your kids, The Little Prince. If you want a book that you can put on your bookshelf and happily pull out every 6 months and read it and always find something new to discover, you read The Little Prince. If you like fun art and pictures throughout your book, read The Little Prince. If you just like books or stories or anything, read The Little Prince. If you're someone that typically only reads nonfiction and doesn't read fiction, read The Little Prince, because even though it is a fictional book, there is so much impactful things inside this book that I feel like it is just so good. I love this book. It's so sweet. It's like you can't help but feel like I just want to be a kid again. And it makes you laugh at yourself. It makes you laugh at the whimsy of childhood. It makes you laugh at and cry even, honestly, at the things you feel like maybe you're missing. It's so good. It's a beautiful story. And I even wrote down some of the quotes that I just truly love from this book. One of them is, all grown-ups were once children, but only a few of them remember it. If you read the book, you'll know what I mean. The next one is, well, I must endure the presence of a few caterpillars if I wish to become acquainted with the butterflies. So beautiful. It is just a 10 out of 10 book. It was originally a French book that has now been translated into like so many different languages. We even own one in Spanish now that we live in Peru, and you're just gonna love it. So go read it if you haven't read it already. Get your butt out there. Go read The Little Prince. Okay, the next book that I have is The Tale of Despereaux. 5 out of 5 stars, no notes. Okay, this book I loved as a kid, like absolutely loved. I think I've read it multiple times as a kid. Just the story of it is so captivating and good for a childhood story, where you're getting to, it's all centered on this castle, right? And there's different characters. Despereaux is a little mouse. Roscuro. I have no idea if I'm saying these names right, so don't hate me if I'm saying them wrong. Who's a rat, and he loves the dark, but he covets a world with light. Then there's Megrissou. Either way, she's a serving girl who has a wish to be a princess. And all three of these characters each have their own section of the book. So like there's the first section, which is Despereaux, this little mouse who dreams, and he loves music and stories, and he falls in love with the princess, and no one really gets him in his little mouse world. They're like, what's wrong with this guy? He's hecka weird. Get him out of here, right? And then the next section is about this rat who, again, is not really understood by the rats, because all the rats love the darkness. They want to live in the dungeon their whole life. And this guy's like, let me see the light. And then the third section is on the serving girl, Miggery, who is a little slow-witted, and she's just kind of quirky and funny, but she has this dream to be a princess. And then the fourth section of the book is what brings all of them together. Perfect pacing. You love each and every one of the characters. No one is directly like bad or good of the main characters. You just see why they want what they want and how they get wrapped up in that. And it just has these themes of like revenge and love and tenacity and courage and the willingness to do something that's different than what everybody else expects you to do. And it's so good. And this is a story that, like I said, as a kid, I loved. And I reread this book last year, I believe. And even as an adult, it's so good. It keeps you captivated. And something I appreciated as an adult that I didn't really notice or even care about as a kid is that they don't really sugarcoat it. The author, Kate, she doesn't sugarcoat the concepts in this story. There's some heavy stuff, right? There's some abuse. There's some like really dark, evil things, like the rats can be pretty dark. But there's not the sugar coating. But what it does do is like it shows the darkness, but then it also shows this light and this hope and this beauty amongst all of this. And that's something that even as an adult, I feel like it made for a really well-developed, beautiful, impactful story. So I highly recommend The Tale of Despereaux. I used to think it was The Tale of Despereaux until I grew up until last year, honestly, when I read it again. But this is just such a timeless story. Anyways, I highly recommend this book. So definitely get out there and read The Tale of Despereaux if you have not read it. Okay, the last book that I'm talking about today is The Princess Bride. Again, if you have not heard of this, where have you been? For anyone that doesn't know this story, The Princess Bride is about this girl, Buttercup, and she falls in love with this guy. What's his name? Oh, Wesley, right? But then they get separated, and Buttercup's going to become the princess, and Wesley, I'm not going to give the whole thing away. But the way this story is told, though, is so unique. I have never, ever read a book that is told like this. The narration is so unique. Something about this book that is really fun is that it hops between these two stories at the same time, right? If you watch the movie, you know what I'm talking about, where the movie goes from like the sick kid who's getting his grandpa reading the story to him, and then the other part of the story is the book they're reading, which is The Princess Bride. Well, the book itself is a little bit different in how they do that concept, but it's essentially the same. There's the narration, which is like in modern times, right? And he's talking about how he like created this shorter version of a story that he always appreciated. And so you hop between the narration and the story, and it's so funny. The narration and the quips and the wittiness and the way he kind of makes fun of himself, the author, as you go through the story is just such a fun, engaging way to tell a story. One of my favorite books that I've read since then, which is Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. If you read the section after the book, Sanderson talks about how he was inspired by the narration in The Princess Bride and how he wrote the narration in Tress of the Emerald Sea. It's different, obviously, but it has the same like humorous, willing to make fun of himself type of story. It's just funny. It's great. And it also has all the like classic elements of a fairy tale, right? There's like sword fighting and pirates and a princess and again, forbidden love and adventure and that ragtag team that saves the day at the end of the book. And it's a good, wholesome overall story. Amazing characters. Every character is developed so well. They all have their unique selves, and the way they come together and complement each other is just so great. So I highly recommend The Princess Bride. If you have seen the movie, the book is even funnier. I don't even know how that's possible because I feel like the movie is also funny. It's a specific type of humor. So if you're not like into that corny, a little bit cheesy, dumb humor, then you may not like it. But I am so into that and I love it. And the wittiness. So overall, it's just heartwarming, unique. And if you're like someone who reads a lot of fantasy books or like heavy, huge books, and you just want something that you can pick up and read quickly and have like a palate cleanser and something that's just gonna like, fuel you through a story in a great way, you're gonna love this one. So highly recommend. Overall, all 4 of these books are 5 out of 5 stars. The Tale of Despereaux, The Princess Bride, The Little Prince, and Holes. I feel like you must get out there and read them. You just must, okay? And with that, thank you so much for watching this video. If you have any other recommendations for books I should read or books I should talk about, please let me know. Or let me know how you feel about these books that I talked about. Do you love them? Have you read them? Have you heard of them? Do you hate it? We'd love to hear either way. Again, thank you for watching. Please like if you enjoyed what you watched. Subscribe if you want to see other bookish content. And again, have a beautiful day. Mwah. And I'll see you in my next video.